All righty. And yes, there we go. I believe we are happening. Hi, everybody. I am Tad. I will be here for the next hour. I am in a different spot, as you may notice or may not have noticed. I don't know. I explained this at some length last night, probably really irritating length, but basically, with my beloved wife out of town, and as the sole captain of a very leaky ship full of dogs and cats, but especially dogs, I felt it was probably a good idea to move all my work stuff, or my computers and cameras and lights and all that stuff, up from downstairs, from my office, so that I could be up here with the dogs while I was working. Because basically my daily job at the moment is just working on the copy edited manuscript of Splintered Sun, which I am doing, and requires me essentially to sit at a computer here for many hours every day. And because the dogs are generally getting along fine, but every now and then there's some controversy over who gets which bed to lie on, or whose food or treat or whatever, chew, belongs to whom, I was getting irritated by having to run up the stairs every 20 minutes to find out what was going on and why Johnny was growling, or, whatever. So as a result, I decided, well, as long as Deb's out of town, I might as well just move this up, and then I'll just go downstairs to do the whatchamacallit. And then I realized I'd have to move everything back down to do the broadcast. So instead, I'm just doing everything up here. So I am currently sitting in front of one wall of the house. I have one of Deb's blankets hanging behind me just to make for something more attractive to look at than white walls and my slightly pink head. And that's where we're at, and that's why things look different. So last night, we will see how this goes, because this is still a work in progress. Last night was the first time I did it. The dogs were very puzzled by why I was sitting here talking to my desk. And several times during the broadcast last night, Johnny came over to find out what was going on and to be reassured that nothing weird or bad was happening. And one of the times he trod on a bunch of my wires and pulled over one of my lights and things like that. And Lemon every now and then starts to bark at things, or her other trick she's just developed is taking one of her loudest toys, in this case an antler of some kind, and throwing it around the house, just clatter, clump, thank, bump, clunk, all over the place, which is what she was doing last night. So all of these things being the case, there may be some distractions, but it was a decision I made because I thought it would be better for the dogs in the long run. Cats don't care. Dogs do want to know where we are and where I am, especially with Deb out of the house. So that's that. Now, what else is there to mention before I get into the actual reading and stuff? Working on the copy edited manuscript, as I mentioned. I have about another week or so to finish that up, and I think that won't be a problem. I hope it won't be a problem. I feel like I'm well on schedule with that. Everything else in terms of work-related stuff has been kind of put by the side. I was working on the next book, but that is, had to go sit by itself in the corner and quietly weep while I attend to the more pressing need to work on the manuscript of Splintered Sun. So that's where that is. Deb is in England, as mentioned, hanging out with family and friends, and from everything she has sent to us so far, doing very well. Doing very well. We had another piece of news yesterday, which I actually heard coming ahead of time because I was tipped off. But our son, our eldest child, has proposed to his girlfriend, and she has said yes. No times, no dates, no nothing set yet, but they are affianced, to use an old-fashioned term, and many congratulations to both of them. I won't say more about it than that because it's their life and their privacy and all that. But since they put it up on TikTok or something, I felt like, okay, I can say something now, which I didn't feel like I could last night. Anyway, so I'm very pleased for them, needless to say. And he's a great young man, and she's a great young woman, and they will be very good with each other. They already are So in a good mood about that, very happy. And yeah, that's pretty much the news from Lake Wobegon, to quote a now extinct show. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say on any of the normal subjects. The dogs are doing pretty well. The cats are doing pretty well. I'm getting a bit cabin fevery because when our daughter is out of the house, as she is a lot at the moment, both because of her own social life and her job, I'm sort of can't go anywhere unless I take the dogs with me. So I'm just kind of hunkered down working. And yeah, that's about all. There's not really a lot to tell. I've been in that kind of trough of just working and doing things like that. So, with no further ado then, let me just go check and see who might have popped in to say hello. And I see Tracy McClatchy. Hello, Tracy. Good to see you. Yes, having a lovely day so far. Emily Bell, hello, hello. Good to see you and welcome as always. Christy Sanders, you too. A pleasure to have you. Isaac, as always, a stalwart and steadfast attender of the readings, and always glad to have you. Igor Tabak. Hello, Igor from Croatia. Good to see you, Igor. Let me know where in Croatia you are. I've only been there a couple of times, but I have seen more than a few places, so I might have at least an idea of where you're from. But lovely to have you with us, and thank you for joining us. Tim Smeckens, hello, hello. And Tim hopes everybody's doing well. Claudia, hello, Claudia. Just popping in for a few minutes on deadline. Well, that's why we record these things, so not to worry. Susan Shamlin, good to see you. And yes, and Deborah's wonderful fiber art. Yeah, I'll try and find some other things to hang for future things, so it won't always be. And I'll also try to hang them properly, since at the moment they are kind of, it's just kind of makeshift. So I'll see what I can do. But yes, she does do beautiful work. And I particularly like the colors of this one, but I don't think you can really see properly how nice it actually is. Barban is here. Hello, Barban. Good to see you. And Penny Davies, you too. A pleasure. Kelly Kenrick. Hello, hello. Mark J. Marino. Good to have you with us. Petra. What the heck are you doing at 4 a.m. in the morning? Anyway, lovely to have you regardless. Beth Kelleher, hello, good evening. Mark Gamble, hi there, he says. I'm here. Yes, you are, and it was lovely seeing you last week. So it was a great pleasure, and far too long. We'd been waiting for that. Kristen, yes, this is the 7 p.m. California time one. Yeah, I hope so, because it's 7 o'clock here in California, or 7:08. And also lots of nice congratulations. And there's my friend Gabe. I haven't seen you in a long time. Hello, Gabe. Lovely to see you. I hope you are doing well, and please give my love to your whole family, all of the fine people. Medardo Landon Mazadueñas, mi amigo de Mexico. Hello, hello. Good to see you. And Jay Sheckley, one of the world's finest human beings. Lovely to see you too, Jay, and thanks for dropping in to say hi. So, here's where we are. We are getting to the closing sections of the Bobby Dollar story, of which, unlike any of the other things that I have read in the last 5 or 6 years, however long we've been doing this, you're actually getting the whole story. For a variety of reasons. For one, because it's fun to read. Okay, I will confess that. It is among the most fun things to read, the Bobby Dollar books, along with the War of the Flowers and a few others, because for one thing, they're in present diction. You know, the syntax is modern, but also because they both have very weird, wild casts of characters in a comparatively compact space. So they're fun to read and fun to try and come up with voices for on the fly. Because as anybody who has followed me through this this process of reading, which I've been doing as mentioned since like 2020, I don't prep these things ahead of time. That's my shameful confession. I do not sit down ahead of time, as I should, I hasten to say. I do not sit down ahead of time and look at what I'm going to be reading and, try and figure out what voices I'm going to do. This is totally on the fly, folks. I am not organized enough to do it any other way. So I just sit down with wherever I stopped last time, and I start, and I hope that if I see a character coming up that I haven't had to read yet, that I will quickly figure out how I'm going to make them sound, or try if they, are somewhere out of the ordinary. And yeah, that's basically it. These are fun books to read. So we are now almost at the end of the last of the Bobby Dollar books. And the only other major story, Bobby Dollar story, is the God Rest Ye Merry Gentle Pig, which is the Christmas story, which I read, I think, the first Christmas that we were doing this. Anyway, so with all of that said, with all of you out there who have joined us, greeted, and I hope you have felt that greeting and how pleased I am to have you with me, I am going to go back to reading the story instead of wasting the whole time. So here's what happened basically last installment, which was more or less last night, very early this morning, which was that Bobby, after wrapping up various things back in San Judas, kind of saying goodbye because he doesn't honestly think he's going to survive this. He has gone to Kynos, which is, of course, the third way place, has gotten to it with Clarence, who showed up at the last moment, found it absolutely devastated. The house he had seen before is the only thing standing. Around it are acres of devastation, scorched land, destroyed trees, all that. Clearly, Anaita had come to Kynos, angry that Sam and others had been resisting her, and had, just like Bobby makes an allusion to the Wicked Witch of the West standing on the roof spraying fire, except in her case it was more like napalm. I mean, she just devastated the whole area. But the house, interestingly enough, was untouched. And they went in and were promptly, essentially arrested, grabbed by a man with a bow and arrow who didn't know them, didn't recognize them, and was not at all happy to find them wandering around in there. He is taking them somewhere, and as they were walking along, Bobby finally realized that even though this man between his 20s and early 30s, in some ways is a stranger to him, in some other ways he's familiar, and then suddenly Bobby realizes that this is Edward Lyons Walker, the guy whose suicide started this whole thing way back when. And he has clearly gone to Kynos. He was part of the group that the Magians put together to start a new life in a new afterlife. Anyway, so at this point, although Bobby has not explained to Walker how he knows him, they're crossing the lands, and fortunately only the area around the house has been destroyed and devastated, although it's quite a wide area. But the rest of the place is absolutely beautiful, and Bobby realizes that this is not just any sort of planet. It is in fact Earth, an Earth without humans, and that is what the survivors of the Kynos experiment have done, that they have created another Earth, but it's an Earth that is an Earth without people. So, continuing with the end of this chapter, I think it's the end of the chapter. We hiked up what looked like a deer track, out of the scrubby oak forest and into something altogether more northern and more hoodoo. The air turned tangy with the smell of resin, and soon we were surrounded by redwoods and pines tall enough to block the light. I thought we must be getting close, since the cover was deep enough for hiding pretty much anything you wanted to hide, but I was still startled when a high-pitched voice out of the trees said, "Stop or you're dead." "It's me, Sharif," Ed Walker called. "We've got company. Run ahead and tell them." "Will do," said the voice, which sounded like it belonged to a young boy. A few moments later, we reached a level promontory. Men dressed in the same caveman chic as Ed Walker appeared from the shadows, quickly surrounding us. They all had homemade weapons, cudgels, spears, and more bows, so I kept my hands visible and tried to look harmless. Clarence was doing it too, like a new kid on his first day of school. "Give them some room," a familiar voice called from back in the woods. Our captor walked us forward through a good-sized crowd who had come to stare at us until I could see a group of men and women around a small fire whose glow was almost completely blocked by the stones piled around it. Sitting in the middle, still wearing the tattered remains of the suit he'd had on the last time I'd seen him, but also wrapped in skins and rags as well, sat Sam. "That you, B?" he called. "Hey, and the kid too. I was beginning to wonder if you were coming. Took you guys long enough." "I just got your message," I said. "In fact, you were over in my neck of the woods, what, yesterday? So it hasn't been very long. You okay, man?" "Yesterday on Earth. It's been a good bit longer here." Sam laughed, not the cheerful kind. "So, what do you think of the place? I hope you like it, old buddy, because I don't think any of us are going to be leaving." Chapter 43, Another Fine Mess. "Well, damn, Ollie," I said to Sam as we seated ourselves on a couple of the rocks ranged around the fire. "Sorry about this." "It's one of your best, Stanley." He shook his head in his best Oliver Hardy style. "Usually this is funny, sort of, even when we're in a horrible situation, but I don't think either of us was feeling very cheerful. Knowing how much water you've both seen go under the bridge isn't much comfort when the bridge finally collapses." We all sat in silence and tried to warm our hands. Many of the Kainos folk who'd been watching our exchange like worried kids spying on the grown-ups began to relax, or at least not to feel actively endangered. There were no real children, of course. Even the sentry, Sharif, who in person turned out to look like a teenager, had probably lived a long, full life, since that was the only kind of volunteer the Magians had recruited to come here. Experienced adults, willing to trade in the coin flip of heaven or hell for a more nuanced afterlife. I imagine by now some of them were regretting the decision. Ragged, many of them bandaged, the third way pioneers looked a lot more like international refugees than the souls of the great and good enjoying their reward. A quick estimate of the number of campfires scattered through the woods told me there were probably only a few hundred survivors here in total. Not exactly an army. The ground was hard, and the air was raw and chilly, but at least whatever version of Earth this resembled wasn't in the middle of winter. That was a good thing, because the fire wasn't big enough to cook a single strip of bacon. "How did everything get so bad so fast, Sam? How much time's gone by here since I saw you?" "About 2 weeks, I guess, but it happened pretty quickly. You know who showed up the same day I got back. Luckily, most of us were away from the settlement when she came. Man, that angel's not just ambitious or complicated. She's insane, or at least she was when she got here. Some of our bosses are complete assholes, literally holier than thou, but there's something really wrong." "Dr. Gustavus," I began, then realized Sam didn't know who he was. It was another small blow, since in the old days Sam knew everything I knew, but things were different now, and had been ever since this third way thing started. "This guy I know, kind of a researcher, said that she's not like all the other angels because she was a goddess first." "Yeah, not the nice kind." Sam was bleak. "She came in here like gangbusters." I shook my head in frustration. "But we still don't know why she built this place, what the whole thing is about. Why would she make such a risky deal? And what did Eligor get out of it?" Clarence spoke up. "Is there something here she needs?" Sam grunted. "What does a heavenly power need that she doesn't already have or can't already make?" "This is horseshit," said a third, clearly angry voice. I turned. It was Ed Walker, who was sitting a few feet away, giving us a bit less respectful distance than the others. "We've got more important things to do than talk about crap like that, like surviving." "Simmer down, Ed." Sam turned to me. "I assume you figured out who this is by now. He's a good man, but things have been a little difficult for all of us." "You don't have to apologize for me, Samariel," said Walker. "We've got several hundred people here to protect." and she's coming back. She's coming back because of you, he spat. You Magians, you angels. It was a curse word. You're the cause of this, and now your crazy boss is going to destroy us all. Or maybe your souls will go where they should have gone in the first place, Clarence said. The highest won't just let you disappear. I had years left to live. Walker stood up. We need to kill that monster or buy her off somehow because we can't beat her. And if you can't think of a way to do either of those things, then we're all just wasting time here when we should be trying to get as far away as possible. He gave Clarence and me a nasty look. And when we run for it, our chances will be a lot better if we don't take any angels with us. Not even you, Sam. He picked up his bow, turned, and marched away from the fire. Don't mind Ed, Sam told me as he watched Walker go. He's been patrolling night and day. He's scared and tired. We all are. But he looked bothered. How many people do you have here? I asked. And how do you keep them all fed? Sam actually smiled. Fed? This is going to be a paradise, son. Souls don't have to eat here in Kainos, although they can. Some of the settlers eat fruit or edible roots and vegetables just because they like to. And of course, we use the plants to make things. He held up the blanket he wore over his suit coat. The coarse woven fabric looked a lot like burlap. There's a plant fiber that we've learned to weave, and there are sheep and other animals, so I'm sure we'll learn how to make proper clothing someday soon. We? You sound like you've gone native, Sammy boy. He didn't smile this time. I've had to pitch in. After all, I'm the one who brought a lot of these people here. And there's plenty to learn, or relearn in a sense. Kainos has only existed for a few years after all, and we recruited more scholars than farmers. That was Kephas's, you-know-who's, doing. It's like she went out of her way to pick the philosophical over the practical. Yeah. Then something clicked for me. Her enemies. What do you mean, Bobby? Clarence asked. I looked around, but with Walker's departure, most of the other inhabitants of the Third Way had turned from us, perhaps because they didn't want to know what we were talking about. I could tell by their faces that they were frightened, that angels didn't mean many good things to them anymore. I think that's it, I said quietly. She wants to be worshipped. I think that's what Gustavus was pointing toward. As an angel, she was just one of many doing the highest's work, however important she might have been compared to you and me. But I saw her in her home, and if you want to talk about a 5,000-year-old Persian-American princess, that's our girl. And if she was going to be worshipped again, like in the old days, she didn't want lumps and idiots doing it. She wanted the best and the brightest, like these. I made a small gesture to indicate the people around us. She wanted the smart ones, the rationalists, the kind who back on Earth hardly even believed in heaven. Really? All this just to be somebody's deity again? Asked Clarence. You don't get the goddess out of your system that easily, kid. Yeah, it makes sense. I felt like a piece of the puzzle, only a small one in our present situation, but still a piece had finally fallen into place. Why else would she risk everything to build something like this? First of all, it takes balls, serious angel balls, to go against heaven this way, not to mention bargaining with hell. Why else would she strike out on her own and build what's basically a colony? Because she wanted worshipers again, her very own. That's what she's done here, but it's gone wrong, and so she's pissed off. Ha! Pissed off doesn't begin to describe it, Sam said. She came in on a chariot of light. I didn't see it, but Ed Walker did. It's one of the reasons he's so angry. She came in on her chariot. It was pulled by those two lions, but they flew. They were made of light and diamonds, and they flew. She came in like a phantom jet, and she scorched everything around the house. You saw that, I'm sure. But she didn't burn the house, I pointed out. I think that's because the Going to Mecca cube is in there, but I'm not sure. Or because it's her church. Huh? Sam wiped his hand across his face wearily. Sorry, say that again. Even us angels need sleep here sometime, just like on Earth. Haven't you wondered about the way the house is built? Taller than it should be, that big tower. It's a stealth temple. It's where she expected to be worshipped. Sam pursed his lips. Maybe, but I'm doubting she expects much worshiping now, not after what she did. Those of us who weren't there could still hear her, even from miles away. So loud her voice echoed in the mountains, demanding that we turn over the traitors. He looked at me. By the way, those traitors are you and me, buddy. But mostly you, I'm afraid. Still, I'm pretty sure she won't deal too kindly with me either. Besides me, the last two Magians still here, Calathiel and Phydorathon, we called them Kylie and Fred, were watching the settlement, and she vaporized them, along with a couple of dozen poor souls who happened to be there at the time. The only good thing was that she didn't stay long, that she didn't hunt the rest of us down and wipe us out right then. You're right. That's hopeful. It means there's some limit to her power, either here or because of something back in heaven. I filed that one away. I still didn't think we had a snowball's chance in a game of Tartarus tennis, but I wasn't giving up without some kind of fight. A little while passed in silence. Not the peaceful kind of sitting with old friends so much as the exhausted kind. Clarence and I hadn't done much except to take a long walk, but seeing what Anaita had done to the place had hollowed me out, and I didn't have much left. Also, I truly didn't think we had much of a chance. It was a familiar feeling in a way, like the hours before a major action back when I was in the Harps, especially after we lost our top kicker Leo and he didn't get resurrected. It was all there, the doubt, the fear, the feeling that what you really wanted to do was start screaming about how unfair it was and never stop, or even just pick a direction and start running. But in the Harps, we never did, mainly because everybody else was in the same position, and if you buckled, the whole wall might collapse and come crashing down. But damn, the wall sure felt shaky. Anything else I need to know about the physics of this place? I asked Sam after a while. What, you mean like you can avoid dying by jumping twice and then using your special survival coin? Sam smiled sadly. Ain't a video game, B. This Lemon, it's okay. Excuse the interruption. What, you mean like you can avoid dying? Lemon, it's all right. Hush. Come on, it's okay. Try it again. What, you mean like you can avoid dying by jumping twice and then using your special survival coin? Sam smiled sadly. Ain't a video game, B. This is pretty much just like Earth. Superior force beats weaker force. We don't eat, and the souls themselves may not die, but they disappear and don't come back if their bodies die here. We found that out after you-know-who blew our asses up. As the kid said, I'm guessing that the ones who got killed went back into real judgment. For a moment, I saw the deep hurt he'd been keeping hidden. God, I hope they did. Yeah, but she's got that wired somehow, too, I said. Otherwise, she wouldn't risk freeing all those souls. She must have some way to silence them about Kainos when they're being judged. Maybe the same trick she used on me at my trial. Or she's keeping them away from judgment altogether. I confess I shuddered a little. What was it like here before everything went to shit? How do you mean? What was the routine? Did the Wicked Witch visit often when she was still Kephas? I'm sorry about that, Bobby. You were right about her. I just didn't want to hear it. I'd put too much into the place. I let myself get conned into believing in something again. It doesn't matter now, Sam. I just want to know all the odds. You think there's something we can do other than just get barbecued like so much brisket? Clarence wasn't saying anything, but he was clearly listening. I had come to like him enough that I was truly sorry I'd got him into this not-so-fine mess. Who knows, I said, but I live in hope, so please answer the questions. The Mecha Cube, for instance, does it connect to anything besides Anaita? Just herself, as far as I know. She used it to send us messages, instructions, back in the days when we all believed in this. And we could call her with it if we had an emergency. She didn't like that much. Even then, when she was Kephis, she was kind of a pain in the ass about answering questions. But it always worked. Well, that's something anyway. Do you still have your magic glove? He was a bit surprised. Yeah, tucked away in here. He patted his crude jacket. But I don't think I can use it against her. In fact, I'm pretty damn sure of it because Fred, Phydorathon had one too. All us Magians do. Walker said Fred tried to use it against her when she came. All that happened was that Fred burned up like a road flare, hand first, then all down him. At least it was quick. In fact, I might use it that way myself if it comes to it. He laughed, and for a moment sounded a bit more like the old Sam. Better quick than slow. Don't do anything stupid. We're not totally out of options. He gave me a look, mostly cynical, but with just enough interest to make me feel like a real bastard, because even then I didn't believe any of my half-baked ideas had a chance of working. Too many variables, especially variables as crazy as whether Eligor could be trusted. Yeah, that's what I said. If we had even the tiniest chance to survive this, it would be because the Archduke of Hell, who hated my guts and had already swindled me several times, would decide to do something that would help me. He'd accepted the deal I offered him in 5-page mill, but that meant exactly nothing. In fact, since even if he fucked me again, Eligor himself would stay fat and happy, the odds were distinctly against his honoring his promise. Options? Tell me, Sam said. Is it safe? Can all these people be trusted? Clarence asked. It was a fair question, but as I said, none of the Kainos folks seemed to be listening. Still, I beckoned Sam and the kid to get up and move with me a little farther away from the camp. It wasn't until long afterward that I realized I never checked to see where exactly Ed Walker had gone. It's like this, I said, when we'd settled ourselves against an outcropping some distance away. We really don't have a prayer, no pun intended, against our goddess friend if we're just going to try to trade shots with her. We're not going to trade any shots anyway, said Sam. You may have noticed that other than the Mecha Cube, there isn't any technology here that would make a medieval peasant scratch his head. We got arrows, spears, clubs. Shit, we haven't even got around to smelting bronze yet. So how are we going to fight you-know-who? This isn't Kansas, but it isn't the Emerald City either. You could throw the world's biggest bucket of water on her and it wouldn't do a thing. I know. But I'm not just going to lie down and die either. The bitch has been after me for months. Sent that Smiler psychopath after me, brainwashed Walter Sanders and banished him to hell. Yeah, I know, kid, I haven't told you about that. But guess what? She did. Oh, and she murdered a really nice young woman who was a friend of mine. And now she wants you and me on a stick, Sam. You too, Clarence, since you're with us. She won't leave any witnesses. Harrison, he said. Huh? You promised you'd stop calling me Clarence. Shit, yeah, I did. Look, if we survive, I promise I'll do better. That's so like you, Bobby, he said, but without too much heat. Give a promise you know you won't have to live up to. The only kind worth making, my friend, the only kind worth making. Now, just let me spin out some stupid, hopeless ideas, and you guys can start shooting them down. I'm too tired, Sam complained. Can't I just tell you now that you're full of shit? It won't work and you'll get us all killed so I can get some sleep? Not a chance, big guy. We're all in this for the duration, but it may go down as soon as the sun comes up, so we need to do our talking now. Sam sighed. Shit, you probably won't stop talking even if you do burn up. So, as the familiar and yet wildly foreign stars wheeled through the sky above us, and the camp fell into silence and sleep, I explained to them the novel way I'd figured out to get us all killed. Because who wants to die some boring, old-fashioned way? Chapter 44, White on Black. It started snowing during the night, swirling tiny white flakes that stuck in hair and clothing but never came thick enough to make drifts on the ground. Not until the wind rose, anyway. After that, it all moved pretty quickly into what you'd expect in the hills in midwinter back home, and that's basically where we were, even if this was a California that hadn't known a human footstep until recently. I was finding it hard to sleep, so I got up and wandered through the camp and out to the edge where I could brood by myself. As I stepped out of the last knot of Kainos folk, sleeping huddled together for warmth, I saw a lone woman standing sentry, several layers of cloth and skins wrapped around her, a spear in one hand and something I couldn't quite make out in her other. I could see it, of course, because I have super angel vision, a bit better than human normal, not really X-ray eyes or anything, but it was way too weird looking to be any weapon I could think of. The sentry watched me approach without saying a word, but she seemed to make a small, strange noise as I passed. It took me a moment to realize it was the sound of her teeth chattering. I turned back. You sound cold. Can I take the watch for you? She stared. You're an angel, aren't you? I had the feeling that we weren't quite as popular as we used to be, but I told the truth. I am. Delorio. I stuck out my hand. But back on Earth, I'm called Bobby. She nodded, clearly quite used to the phrase, back on Earth, but she didn't look particularly thrilled to meet me. An angel? Are you friends with Samario? Years and years. She nodded again. He's from San Judas, same as I am. A lot of us early ones were, like Ed. Behind the very red tip of her nose was a young, intelligent face. Everybody was fairly young here, at least in appearance, and a pair of dark eyes that looked like they'd seen things their owner wished they hadn't. You know Ed? Now it was my turn to nod. Only now in the flesh, but yes. Yeah, everybody knows Ed. He's kind of the mayor. Well, not really. That's Natalie Wang, but only because Ed said if we elected him, he wouldn't do it. I had become a little uncomfortable about Edward Walker. It was hard to reconcile the quiet, angry man I'd met with the well-known and apparently popular scientist and businessman whose life I'd studied. Still, there wasn't really any precedent for what he and the others had been through. And you are? Oh, sorry. She stuck her spear into the ground, butt first, and extended a hand in a fingerless glove of the burlap cloth I already thought of as Kainos cotton. Lyra Garza. Lyra, like the star. My father was an amateur astronomer. I couldn't help smiling a little at the coincidence. My counterstrike unit had been the Lyrae, nicknamed the Harps. Where in Jude are you from? Because I'm from there too. Small world, she said, then looked around. Almost literally, at least the human population. She shook her head. A few hundreds of us, max, with a whole world to explore and build in. Then this shit happens. Sorry, I was at Stanford. I lived in Barron Park over by the university. Downtown, me. Usually somewhere within walking distance of Beaker Square. I've been meaning to ask you, what's that thing you're holding? She looked quickly from her spear to the weird bulbous object. Oh, this. It's a rattle. Dried oak gall, a big one, full of rocks. In case I have to wake everybody up. It's pretty loud. She squinted at me as she pushed a wisp of hair from her face. You offered to take my watch, didn't you? That was nice, but no. I want to do my part, and I'm not going to be much of a fighter if it comes to it. I hope it won't come to it, I said. At least not for you and the rest of the... I trailed off. I forgot to ask Sam, what do you call yourselves? She smiled, and for the first time I saw her as something other than a poor soul shivering on a cold hillside. We argued about that a lot at first. We spoke lots of different languages at home, and now we're all speaking, well, whatever it is we're speaking here, and the words have different meanings. She laughed. I'd love to study it, actually, this angelic language thing and how it translates to all of us. That's a career study and more right there. I was an etymologist. Well, it was. Who am I kidding? Always will be. Anyway, you can imagine lots of smart, freaked out people. In the beginning, we were much happier arguing than exploring or building, most of us. I think it was to be honest, the religious nature of what had happened to us that made us settle on pilgrims. Pilgrims, huh? But you wound up being more the Plymouth Rock kind than the going to Canterbury kind. A little of both of those, I think. But we're also the going to Lourdes kind. Hoping for a miracle? Well, we sure are now. I took a long walk, thinking about what Lyra had said, and a million other things. I wandered until I would have worried about finding my way back if I was a normal human, but my sense of smell and direction were both pretty good, so I located the camp again without trouble. Dawn was still a short time away, but most of the pilgrims were up and getting ready to move, getting ready to walk toward danger and maybe even destruction. Talking to Lyra Garza had made it clearer to me that even if I hadn't been involved in bringing them all here, as Sam had, I still wanted badly to keep these people safe. And if that unlikely circumstance actually came to pass, it would be interesting to see what happened with this little colony of pilgrim souls starting over again on what was, for all purposes, Earth 2, the reboot. In the cold, windy dark, Sam explained to the pilgrims what he thought should be done to ensure their chance at survival. There were questions, of course, lots of them, but I was surprised and pleased by how practical most of them were. A few were adamant about wanting to keep running, that they didn't want to take the kind of risks Sam and I were talking about. We told them they could go, but only a couple of dozen actually left. That surprised me, too. Shortly after sunrise, we started out. At least we hadn't needed to feed everyone. They say Earth armies march on their stomachs, but ours could survive on heavenly righteousness alone. At least until the serious shit started happening. Then all the righteousness in the world wasn't going to save us. Clarence was way too chatty for this early, especially in a world where I couldn't get any coffee. So I sent him off to talk to various folks Sam had picked out to handle different parts of our plan. Besides, I wanted to chat with Sam in private, and privacy was already pretty damn hard to come by, surrounded as we were by nervous pilgrims. The private talk didn't happen right away. First, Sam and I had to have a long meeting with Natalie Weng, an Anglo-Chinese woman from Shanghai with the self-confident air of a tiny General Douglas MacArthur. I liked her, and I liked her deputy as well, a thin, thoughtful young man named Farber, who had lived in Freiburg while he was alive. I say young, but he mentioned how a bomb had flattened his house, quote, during the war, and I don't think he meant the Gulf War, since as far as I know, that conflict never reached southern Germany. That was the thing about the Kainos people. They looked like the student-age counselors at a summer camp, but most of them had probably reached 70 or 80 before they died, some of them more. Ed Walker stayed close to us, but didn't actively participate. Still, he was a constant presence even when he was a dozen yards away, and it was clear that Walker had clout no one else did. Several times I saw Mayor Wang look over at him, as if to make sure he agreed. Our people here are all hard workers, Wang told Sam and me. All achievers, and they've got young, healthy bodies. But we're a little short on engineers and military folk. I'm hoping we don't need those things, I said. Other than the special volunteers, we're not planning anything that requires real expertise, just labor. In fact, after we get set up there, I want all your people who aren't actually involved to move as far away as possible. You won't have much trouble convincing them, she said. We're all pretty shocked by what happened to the others. None of us wants to die again so soon. At last, all our mental lists cross-checked. Wang and Farber went off to do their own organizing and, I suspect, deliver a few pep talks. I finally had a chance to talk to Sam without an audience. What about the God glove? I said. I asked last night, but you obviously didn't want to talk in front of Clarence. No, I just didn't want to get into an argument in front of Ed Walker and all these other people. Kind of sucks for human morale to watch agents call each other names. Because I can't use it, B. It's the only real power we've got. I thought I already told you about this. We all had them. All of us Magian angels. And when she did her Wicked Witch number, Fidorathon tried to use his glove against her. He burned up. Ed Walker was there. He saw the whole thing, but he didn't know what was really going on. He thought it was something Anaida did to Fred, but I know better. That's what happens when you try to use something like the God glove against the power that gave it to you. I tried to hide my disappointment, but he could see what I was feeling. We've known each other too long not to know things like that. Can it at least let me make one private call on the Mecha Cube? I asked, without Anaita finding out. Don't know, maybe. But she's probably going to know about it. Well, my idea would work anyway. Not that it's going to work, but in a hypothetical sense, it could all still work even if she intercepts the call. She'll still show up, but she'll be a lot harder to beat. I'll do my best, B. Sam punched my shoulder. It sort of hurt. I say we think of it as an interesting challenge. A bunch of Stone Age savages trying to take down a goddess. They're not Stone Age, but their technology is our technology too, because that's all you and I have to work with it. Let's face it, this is going to be one of those Butch and Sundance things. Yeah, I said. I hope I didn't sound as miserable as I felt. I just hope the rest of these folks survive so someone will remember the cool things we said as we were blowing up. Yeah, me too. I was planning on, oh shit, how about you? Well, now I'm going to have to think of a new one since you're using mine. It was a long walk through the hills back to the house, and although everybody was reasonably young and fit, more than a few had sustained injuries in their initial escape from Anaita's deadly tantrum, so the line got a bit strung out. If it hadn't been for the cold air and snow flurries, and if I'd been wearing something warmer than a light jacket and t-shirt, it might have been a pleasant winter's walk in the California hills. Except, of course, this wasn't the same California, and back in the real one, autumn wasn't even technically over yet. There was definitely a time slippage between here and Earth, and it made me wonder about some of the other differences. Not that much, really, said Sam when I asked him. When we first got here, nobody died, of course. That's one of the reasons this group is so worried and fucked up now. They thought of this as the afterlife, and afterlife usually means immortality. What do you mean nobody died? Should anybody have? One of the men, African guy named Chima, had a tree fall on him when we were timber cutting for the new houses. See, after the first few weeks, it was pretty clear we were going to need more housing, so we made hand axes and started cutting down trees to make log cabins. None of the people here have really done this stuff, and some idiot planned his fall wrong. Chima couldn't get out from under it. He should have died on the spot. That was a couple 1,000 pounds of hardwood. But not only didn't he die, his bones knit back together in about a week, and he was up and around again not too long after that. He didn't even limp. I'd introduced you to him, but he was one of the people near the house when Anaita showed up. Shit. So he actually died 3 times. Maybe. That would probably be the world record for humans, but since he hasn't come back this time, I don't know how proud he's feeling about it. Anything else different here that we can use? People with odd abilities? No. The mortals we brought here, the pilgrims, as they call themselves, are just tougher than at home, but not stronger. Harder to kill. Or they used to be. Damn, man, stop cheering me up so much. The Kainos pilgrims started getting spooked even before we reached the great field of bare, devastated ground. I can't really say I blamed them, since I was feeling that way myself. I suppose I should have been thinking about my life, reviewing my failings and my very occasional successes, thinking about my friends and loved ones, but except for a simmering bitterness that I probably wasn't ever going to see Kaz again, I could only focus on what was in front of me. It's a protective mechanism. Just do your job. Just put one foot in front of the other. When you see the enemy, pull the trigger, although there were no actual triggers to pull in this case. Boil everything down to staying alive. Think about the other stuff later. That was my plan. Except there was one other thing. I'd thought I hated Eligor, the archdemon, the all-time nasty fucker of the millennium, but it was nothing to what I'd come to feel about Anaita. Eligor, bad as he was my enemy. He was just doing his job, even if he enjoyed it way too much. In the highest scheme of things, at least as far as I could tell, he was doing exactly what he was supposed to. But Anaita, she was supposed to be like me, defender of the helpless, protector of the innocent. Instead of what she was, an astonishing, gigantic, fucked up pile of evil. Whatever happened, I was praying I'd at least get to hurt her somehow. That alone might be enough to make it worthwhile. I wanted to be the mosquito that gave her a big, ugly bite just before she was throwing a chic party for the other VIPs. I wanted to be her pimple on prom night. We reached the charred ground shortly before the house itself rose into view above us. Considering it sat on a hill in the middle of nothing, you'll have an idea of how much territory Anaita's snitfit had destroyed. We crunched across the cinders. Faint, wind-blown drifts of snow were accumulating, but not enough to cover the destruction, only to stripe the burned ground with undulating streaks of white, like lines of cocaine on a black light poster. We hiked across this great circle of ruination, the pilgrims scattered and trailing behind us, and I couldn't help thinking about some of humanity's other death marches. Bataan, the Trail of Tears, the chill, the lifelessness of the terrain, the faces of the people we'd brought here all worked to drag me down into hopelessness. Sam hated seeing those expressions more than I did, I'm sure, since he had personally recruited dozens of the pilgrims. We got to the house and gave it a quick inspection, but it was just as we'd left it, empty as a bill collector's heart. A sifting of snow had accumulated beneath windows blown out by Anaita's attack. We found what we needed and got to work inside and outside, toiling in the cold like medieval peasants, digging and chopping and tying knots. Mostly digging. We stopped to drink water occasionally, more for the feel of stopping than any real need for a break. Sam was right. The pilgrims were a hardy lot, and the grim but determined mood seemed to have infected nearly everyone. Only Ed Walker seemed opaque to me, doing his part, but always as though in his mind he was somewhere else. But where? That was a question that worried me. He'd overheard us the night before when we thought we were alone, and he'd heard enough of my plan to angrily demand answers. He'd never seemed very satisfied with them, but to tell the truth, I wouldn't have been either. It was a pretty damn desperate plan, and that was being charitable. Walker had reluctantly agreed, but he'd hardly met my eye since, which added to my feeling that the whole thing was too precarious to work, too crazy. And this was me, the guy who made crazy plans like clouds make rain. At last, about an hour before sunset, we had done all we could. Sam called together Ed and Mayor Wang and Farber, her deputy. "It's time," Sam said. "Get your people out of here. I want all the non-combatants as far away as they can get in the next 30 minutes or so." 30 minutes, said Farber. "Well, we'd better synchronize our watches." We all turned to stare at him. "It was a joke," he said a little sheepishly, "because obviously we don't have watches." "I've actually been to hell," I said. "And you know what? All the comedians there were German." He gave me a look of mock recrimination that made me smile. It didn't last long, but it was a nice 2 seconds of humanity. I hoped it wasn't my last. "So, is it go?" I said. Sam looked around. "Looks like it." "God loves you," I said to Mayor Wang and her pilgrims, "and all of us, I hope. Now get out of here." As they hurried away across the snow and drifting black grit, we sent Walker and his volunteers to get into position. Then, after a last check, Sam and Clarence and I went into the house. I let Sam open the go-to-Mecca box, which he did only after pulling on the brilliantly glowing second skin that was the God glove. It looked like the end of his wrist was one big sparkler, but I knew it was only a birthday candle compared to what Anaita could muster. Shh. And we didn't dare use it against her anyway. "I think the cube is ready," said Sam. "But she may have noticed that I flipped channels, if you know what I mean, so make it fast." I did. I kept my call brief and to the point. "It's time," I said. Just that. When I'd finished, Sam hung up the cosmic phone and adjusted it back to its original setting, which was a hotline right to Anaita, angel of moisture and goddess of our personal ruin. Then he opened the channel. I held my finger to my lips for silence until we crept a little farther away. Then Clarence and Sam and I began to talk normally, as if we didn't know our words were flying right to heaven and directly to our deadliest enemy. We didn't have to wait long to get results. It started when my ears popped, a sudden change in pressure like a cupped blow on both sides of my head. I looked at Sam and he nodded, then hurried over to adjust the mecha cube one last time. No need to speak. The pressure increased, and with it came a definite tang of ozone and an electrical crackle that I could feel on the hairs of my arms and neck. We all took a breath and stepped outside. She stood there in snow flurries that turned the depth of the background into flat black and white static, like a television transmitting only the last whisper of the Big Bang. No glass or potsherds now, she looked like something out of a classical painting, like Juno or Minerva stepped out of a frame and into the world of men, bigger than life-size and unutterably, astoundingly beautiful. She had 2 cats on leashes, tiny compared to what they'd been when I last saw them. Not lions this time, but something long-eared and tawny. If it hadn't been for Anaita being more than 7 feet tall, and the shimmering ripple of her garment, which was more light than fabric, she could have been a rich and gorgeous actress walking her exotic pets. Except we weren't in Beverly Hills, but at the end of an entirely different world. Deloriel. Her voice was honey, love, and regret. The anger of our last meeting was gone, as if it had never been. Why do you fight me? Why didn't you just do as you were told? She turned to Sam. All your friend had to do was bring you back, and we would have been merciful." "We?" Sam asked. "You mean you and the person you pretended to be?" She looked amused almost. "Pretended? Do you mean the guise I wore to recruit you? There was no pretense, only secrecy. Didn't I do what I said? Isn't this world beautiful? Didn't I make it just as I promised and give it to the ones you brought to me?" "Then burned the shit out of it and killed a bunch of them," I said. "Not exactly what one expects from an angel. Not what usually happens in paradise." "Yeah," said Clarence, but he didn't say it out very loud. Still, he was standing in there. He hadn't faced her the first time, of course. Maybe that helped. "Why are you such a troublemaker, Deloriel?" Anaita didn't sound angry. In fact, she sounded exactly like a mother worried by a foolish child who won't learn. "You have been a thorn in my side since the beginning. So unnecessary." "I didn't do anything to you. You sent that stabby maniac after me. You've done nothing but try to destroy me." "And you've tried just as hard to destroy my work," she said, but still calm, still more in sadness than in anger. "You and that report you made. We should have had months more to build here, years of Earth time, before the others found out about this place. Instead, you upset everything, you silly little creature. Ruined a plan whose glory and beauty you can't even conceive. You dare to complain about what I did. I should have incinerated you the first time you interfered. In fact, I should have done it earlier, at the very start." And that's where we're going to stop, because it's already 2 minutes after the top of the hour. So, bingo. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up till next week, at which point you will be back to join me, I assume. Next week I have to think about what. Anyway, don't worry about it. If there's something else going on, I will let everybody know. Otherwise, I will be back here reading as per usual at the same times. So with that, I say thank you so much for joining me. I love spending time with you. Although my dogs clearly think I'm losing my mind because I'm sitting here talking to myself. But that's okay. They came over to be petted several times, so they're at least been reassured. And so I want you, all of you, to take good care of yourselves. Please take good care of your loved ones, your friends and family. Keep an eye out for others who might need a helping hand, kind word, a couple of bucks, do what Jay does and bring them some warm socks. Whatever might be that you can do to help out another human being, because there are a lot of human beings needing help right at the moment. And with that, I say again, thank you for joining me. Peace, be well, and I will see you very, very soon. Ciao ragazzi.